All right, good afternoon.
Hello.
Welcome to the Growth of the Women's Network Breakout session. My name is Lafrit Buttar. I'm with the Mercadien CPA firm. I work with Sherry in our not-for-profit human services group. We're really happy to be here and be the special breakout partner with NJBIA. So before I introduce Heather, who's hiding behind me right now, as the moderator, a few housekeeping things. There are bios in your programs that detail out all of the bios of the panelists and the moderator, so we're going to keep the intros fairly short. The session is being videotaped, so if you do have a question, feel free to raise your hand and wait for Heather to call on you, but just wait for the microphone to reach you, and that way everyone can hear clearly. All right, and let's get started. So I want to introduce Heather Boshak, who's a partner at Fox Rothschild LLP. She is a co-chair of the Partnership Advancement Committee and co-chair of the Leadership Subcommittee of the Women's Initiative at Fox. A leader among women lawyers, Heather sits on the board of the New Jersey Women Lawyers Association, where she's been an active member for more than a decade. So I'm happy to turn it over to Heather, and let's have a good session.
Very much, Lafrit. Welcome all to the session on the growth of the Women's Network. So we are going to talk a lot about different women's networks, what some people have. We've started some, they've grown some. But before we start, let me get an idea of what your involvement is. How many people at their companies have women's networks? So a good amount. And how many people are interested in having a women's network at their firm or company? We're going to get a lot of insight today from our esteemed panel, all of whom are very involved in the women's networks at their companies. So I am involved in our women's network at our firm, and one question that we will discuss here today is a question that sometimes I get from my male colleagues, is why do we need a women's network? And then the men will sometimes say, well, when do we get the men's network? To which I respond, that's what we live in every day. So let's talk about what we have as women's networks and what they're doing to help us advance in our careers. So let me introduce our panel. We have Caryn Barnes, who is a principal and vice president at Langan Engineering and Environmental Services. We have Amy Klingenpeel, sorry, I can't see this way, senior research scientist at ExxonMobil. Then we have Sherise, aka Sherry, Ritter, with lots of initials, managing director, co-chair, nonprofit and human services group at the Mercadien Group, and Grace Simon, business process manager packaging at Anheuser-Busch InBev, and voted best name for Women's Network as Women in Beer. Yep. So what I'd like to start with is have our panelists each describe what their women's network is at their organization and whether they founded it or grew it. And you can add in, if you founded it, why. So let's start with Grace.
Hi, Grace Simon, like you said, packaging it for Anheuser-Busch. I actually work at the Newark Brewery right across the street, so you probably saw it on your drive here today. Originally from St. Louis, where North America headquarters is. I moved here to the Newark Brewery, and we started this women's group. We had heard whispers of it from the commercial supply side about women in beer, and it was the way the marketing team was trying to connect with other women in the company in a previously male-dominated field. This didn't exist at the brewery level. So when I moved there was one woman in each department at that period of time. So we have packaging, we have brewing, we have logistics, utilities, etc. We were spread out across all these departments, and we never really actually worked together as women. We were friends, we would see each other after work, we would do any work activities together, but we didn't have an avenue to discuss ideas or problems or issues we were coming up with. So we developed Women in Beer for the supply side across the breweries. And this is actually something that the general manager was like, yes, absolutely, go for it. And it's something that's kind of gone zone wide now. We have 16 breweries in North America. It's hosted out of St. Louis now, but we have a quarterly meeting for Women in Beer, and we all TP in together and just discuss what we're working on, different outreach opportunities, and kind of share ideas that way.
Sherry.
Okay, hi, I'm Sherry Ritter, and with Mercadien CPAs, and I co-chair our nonprofit and human services group for the firm. When it comes to starting a women's initiative at Mercadien, it goes back a few years prior to, I would say 3 years ago, we actually formally formed that women's initiative for the firm. But it goes back to myself and my business partner, Marguerite Mimi Mount, and I had our own CPA firm. And 14 years ago, we had the opportunity to merge with Mercadien. And the way that happened was I was involved in the community at the time, and I had met Conrad Drucker, who is our managing partner, and Mercadien was being honored by a civic organization that I was involved in. And when I stood on the stage and looked out, and I was moderating or emceeing the event, I looked out and I saw the 3 tables of Mercadien employees, and they were all men. So after I said to Conrad, "Where are all your women?" So fast forward a few months later, they called us and said, we're looking for some talent, and we're looking for some women in our boardroom, because traditionally CPA firms were a male-dominated industry. And at the time, they had 8 partners, no female partners, and they needed role models for their senior leadership, women in senior leadership level. So I think some of the things we're going to talk about at some point today is are men supportive of your initiative and whatnot, but we were able to, as part of that merger, work towards shifting the culture in Mercadien, and one of the cultural shifts was to really be able to be role models for the women in our firm, and work on our people and set that initiative for the women.
Amy?
My name is Amy Klingenpeel. I work for ExxonMobil. I'm a research scientist. I've been with the company for 2.5 years. And I actually joined into a women's interest network that was already established. So just as a little bit of background about ExxonMobil's, what we would call our Women's Interest Network, or WIN, because we love acronyms. It started in the late 1990s, and it actually started at a site that was a mobile site at the time in Fairfax, Virginia. And it was kind of a grassroots effort to start a women's interest network, because they were interested in helping with retention of women and also promoting professional development of women, because as we all know, diversity, not just gender diversity, is really important for success. So it started there, and then when Exxon and Mobil merged in the late 1990s, more people came to that site, so word kind of spread around about the Women's Interest Network. And then when the women's leadership team became involved, they really supported the Women's Interest Network and helped promote it. So now we have a Women's Interest Network across almost every site that we have globally. So it's really grown. For our interest network that we have at the Clinton site, it's really 3 different divisions. So I'm the co-chair of a personal and professional development committee, and then we also have a working parents committee and a STEM outreach committee.
Caryn?
I'm Caryn Barnes from Langan Engineering and Environmental Services. As the name implies, it's a heavy science and engineering firm, and as you might expect, women are not in the majority of the firm. We do mirror the demographics from schools, and in general, schools and universities, engineering still to this day only comprises about 30% of the population there. And Langan mirrors that. We have about the same number of folks in the room. But when I sat in, I'm a shareholder for the company, when I sat in a room and looking around the room, there was 2 other women in a room of about 100 people. And we all looked at each other and said, we really need to get more people in this room here with us. We weren't sure what we were going to do or how we were going to do it, but we knew we needed to get more leaders in the room. And we went back. We thought about how to start a networking group. We spent a lot of time really honing our mission statement. Perhaps we could have done that a little bit more quickly, but we took some time. And then we ended up pitching it to our senior leaders, which I can tell you that part of the story later. But we're in our 3rd year now, and I'm really proud. We have office leaders in every one of our offices. We have a corporate leadership, and again, at our 3rd anniversary, Looking back at our first year, we had over 200 events across our 17 offices. The first year we did it, both internal and external, and I think it really is moving the needle. But it was, like you said, a grassroots need started by me and 2 colleagues at the firm.
So Caryn, as you said, it's a grassroots need that started it. How did you get it started?
The nuts and bolts? You're asking me the
Yes.
nuts and
I wanna
bolts
know-
of how...
What we all want to know is about one of the scariest days of Caryn's life that she has
I
described.
do say it. I do say that it's one of the scariest days of my life. You know, how do you pitch this? The executive team was an all-male team. I was at home with my husband talking about what I wanted to do, and he looked me in the eye and said, "What are you doing? You're going to put this giant bullseye on your back. Why are you putting yourself out there like that?" And I could only look into myself and say, if I don't do it, if me and my colleagues don't do it, then who will? It's needed. If it doesn't work, okay, we made a try, but somebody's got to try and do this. And like all good engineering presentations, we made a PowerPoint presentation. And I actually remember a practice run through it. We pulled one of our senior project managers, and I said, "Can we just practice this in front of you?" And she sat down and she's like, "Oh my God, we need this. This is awesome. You've got to do this." And she was so excited that we just ran the presentation through her. We were probably, okay, we'll probably do all right with the senior executive committee. We brought ourselves in, still feeling super nervous about it. We made our pitch. We talked about retention. As you said, you know, it's good for retention. It's good to attract good talent. But what really hit home with the executive committee was the business metrics for it. You know, to say that we could reach a different group of clients and contacts that the folks in that room weren't connecting with. It would be better business decisions. Diversity makes better decisions. I won't say easier. Sometimes diversity is very hard to come up with solid decisions. But I think for us, really the selling nature of it was the idea that it would help grow our business and grow our bottom line. So the guys, every one of them said yes. I don't know why I was so scared. They were all very supportive and appreciative to have us go in that room. And I think we got a lot of head nods the first time. So, okay, let's see where it goes. But 3 years later, I think they really do believe the mission now, and they stand behind us, and they're advocating for us. It took a little convincing and seeing some of the results to get there. But our 3rd-year anniversary is September 26th.
So, Sherry, I know you also started the Women's Initiative at your organization and had a little bit of a different path than Caryn had. Can you describe how you got yours started?
Well, so we had, we didn't really have to sell it like Caryn had to sell hers. So, like I alluded to before, we had a true cultural shift. We were known as a sweatshop a bit before Mimi and I joined the firm 14 years ago. And so we were really tasked, and she was really tasked more so than I was, but really helping to change the culture of Mercadien. So as part of that culture change, we did a lot of strategic planning, and we came up with our core focus areas, which were our people, excellence, and growth. So Mimi and I had, over time, done a lot of work for women, especially with financial literacy. And so we had been members of Najabo and other women's groups along the way, and knew that women really like to work with women. And so when it came to working towards our people initiative, the women's interest group at Mercadien was really born out of there. So we didn't need to really go and fight for a return, really do a formal presentation and try to quantify what we thought the results were going to be. We really knew that the firm and our male counterparts knew that there were women that were trying to come up the ranks in Mercadien, and they needed role models. So we already had that support. But we continue to, as part of our initiative, we make sure that the women get a chance to either participate in events similar to what we're doing today. The Princeton Regional Chamber of Commerce has their women WIBA group. The Mid-Jersey Chamber has their women's group, and we try to make sure that our women get a chance to do that. And then we have some internal presentations and discussion groups, and then we also bring external people in to give us a chance to really step back and think about how we want to attack certain issues, and how to balance. It's really about that work-life balance. And the third thing, I guess, would be the fact that it does, because women like to work with other women, it's a good opportunity to help our women that are really trying to make to the manager or partner level meet their business development goals, because you get to learn, you get to know other women and find out what they do. And for me, I don't want to refer business to anybody that I'm not really comfortable with, and I think most of us in the room feel that way too. So it really fits that third initiative, that growth initiative, in our people excellence and growth core focus areas. So 3 years of doing this, and it just keeps getting better and better. And our younger leaders are now, we started with 2 partners in the boardroom 14 years ago. We now have 4 partners out of a group of 17, and we have about 4 female directors and then a number of female managers. And so the managers and the directors are now part of setting the direction for our women's initiative group. So it's nice to have the thought process of different levels and the diversity of either age, type of work that they're doing, and so on.
Thanks. Grace, you had mentioned that there were women's groups at other parts of the company. How were you able to bring it into your facility?
So the general manager of the brewery was all aboard for it. When we brought it up to him, he was like, yes, absolutely, I love it, go with it. The challenges kind of came later, after we had already started the group, whether a couple of the women that were in the group had moved on, they got other jobs at other breweries, they got a promotion to another brewery, they left the company. We struggled to kind of keep our group strong that way. One way we resolved that was reaching out and networking with other groups. Actually, the women at Langan have visited the brewery, Caryn and her colleagues that are here right now, to come for a tour and tasting, and it was really invaluable to grow our network that way, to kind of not feel so small or isolated from the other women that are out there and right next door in our community. The other challenge that we face now moving forward is we have buy-in from senior management, but it's kind of getting down to the floor level. So I work in a production facility. I wear a hard hat, t-shirt, jeans every day. It's hard to get buy-in from the technical experts that have been there for 25 years, 30 years. They're like, why do you need to go? Why are you're out all day for a women network? What? They're not going to be here for our pasteurizer overhaul? As exciting as that sounds, I do wish I could be there. But getting there, and I think this is stepping ahead, but to get their buy-in, it's really, whenever we do have the TPs with other breweries, actually connecting with those women and sending them an email like, hey, I'd like to talk more, you have a similar job to me, I'd like to share things with you, and then I find out they have the similar packer as my line does, and I can talk to them about that and get ideas or challenges they've had with that and how to overcome it, and I can bring that back into my plant and come up with this idea of something new to do, and kind of show those technical experts that don't really understand that I am using this for something good, and it is worth the company's time to let me do this.
So Amy, you mentioned that Exxon's Women's Initiative WIN, W-I-N, right, has been around a long time. I think you mentioned earlier today that since you've been in kindergarten. And so, being that it's something that's continued, are there any obligations put on the network to show return on investment, or how do you keep the management engaged in having a women's network and showing that it's valuable to the organization?
Sure. So our WIN group is just one of a number of employee resource groups that we have on site. And the way that we structure it is that you have to have a management sponsor for your employee resource group. So what we try to do with all the WINs that we have globally is we find the most senior person on site to be our sponsor. So at Clinton, the most senior person on site is a vice president of research and engineering. So he is our sponsor. We're required to meet with him twice a year. So we'll go over our membership statistics, we'll go over events that we've had, we'll go over external events, we'll go over funding. If we need more funding, we'll propose that to him. And he's been very supportive, and he's actually fairly involved besides those 2 meetings a year. he's willing to come to any events that we have. So usually when we have our big events, we'll do a celebration for Women's History Month with an external speaker. He'll come, he'll do the introduction. That really helps with us get buy-in. We also have advisors. So advisors tend to be more senior people at the company. So we have 2 advisors right now. And for the first time, we actually have a male advisor in addition to a upper management female advisor. And so he's been able to do some events for us, speaking engagements, career development, and so I think that's also helped. And I think to get buy-in, you really need also a male advocate that's really out there, supportive, as we talked about before, transparent. I think that is really key to helping with the success of it.
Caryn, I know you have a good story about showing the return on the investment, with your
Sure,
CEO.
sure.
I think that would be beneficial for you to share with the group.
We do a lot of internal events, but we also do some external. And I would like to share the story of our first big external networking event that took place in New York. We had this idea to pitch to do a big leadership seminar, and the president of the company was okay with it. He was kind of on board, but he kind of married the business development manager to my hip to make sure that it was going to be a success. We had a big place in New York City. We had a bunch of different panels. And I'm very pleased to tell you that with only 1 year under our belt, we filled this room to capacity with very prominent women leaders in the metro area, and standing room only, all the way around the room. And the CEO came into the office, into the room with me, and he looked around and he goes, "Caryn, I don't know anybody in this room." And I said to him, that's exactly why we need a women's resource group, because the male executives in our firm are not reaching these very important leaders. And I told him I claimed my success that right at that moment, before anybody spoke, before any panel went on, and said, that we were able to reach a demographic that our leaders really aren't. And I think from that point on, that they were sold that there was opportunity to reach beyond basically the connections that they already had. So we still try to continue to measure those statistics, like what opportunities come in through our networking, are we getting a project? It's very difficult. You guys, you have to touch your connections 7 times or whatever the statistic is before you win a job. But many of our relationships are starting through the women's connections. And at the risk of going a little too long, I'll share you my secret that no matter who I talk to, male or female, I say, do you have a women's network? And I only get 2 responses. One is, no, but we really need to get one. Can you come in and talk with us? Or, yeah, we have one and we're doing great things. Or maybe we need to revamp it. Can you come in and can we share some successes? We've gotten in the room a lot of different places and a lot of different ways to share those, and have had some great networking and training. Deb came in and did a presentation with us one day. It's been a great way to grow our network and to make lasting relationships.
Thanks. So I think it would be helpful to the group to hear what your groups actually do, like both internally, how you help the women or other people in the organization. I guess that would be men, the other people, internally, as well as what you do externally. Sherry, do you want to start?
Sure. So I think I might have alluded to some of this earlier, but the way that we really started 3 years ago was we started internally. And as a partner and having 4 women partners at the firm, one of the first sessions that we had was Path to Partner. And while we've done Path to Partner, what does that look like globally with both men and women? In one of our first women's initiative meetings, we had the 3 of the 4 partners. I was the one that could not attend. I said earlier because I had to go get CPE for my alphabet soup that day. But it was really all about what did it take to get there, and what does that balancing act look like? So that's actually a really good way if you're interested in starting a group at your organization. You can just look inside your own 4 walls and look at the leadership and make an opportunity for them to share their stories, because that's like it's that close. Some of the other things that we do are we attend events like this. We attend the Princeton Chamber networking or women's conference, the Mid-Jersey Chamber's women's conference. I personally started many moons ago. My foray into networking was really done through Najavo. the New Jersey Association of Small Business Women, and I got to know a lot of women through that, and I've developed lasting relationships with them. So using those, encouraging women to step out and go to groups like that, how to participate on boards. So we do a lot of mentoring, if you will, a lot of internal training. And then we also bring speakers in from the outside. So one of the last, I think our last event was, we had a speaker come in, and she showed us, talked to us about what does our life look like if, in a pie, like the balance is the balance of life, or the wheel of life, I guess is what she called it. And like, what are all the different facets of your life that are important to you, be it family, your health, work, children, parents, just carving up your life into different pieces, and then looking at it and saying, oh, well, where do I want that particular piece to be at a certain point in time, and where do I have to reallocate my time? So it's really like time management. And once you look at it, it's a chance to step back when you have an opportunity and you have somebody come in. You kind of get quiet. You think about what they're saying. It's a chance to evaluate where you are, what you're doing, where you want to be. And I like to say, work on that guilt factor, because our wheel of life doesn't always look the way we want it to look. And we may feel guilty when we're missing on certain slices of the pie, so to speak. But when you're sitting amongst your peers and everybody's got the same issues, and that's what that does, bringing everybody together, it makes you feel okay, and hopefully you get rid of some of that guilt. So it's about that work-life balance.
Amy, do you want to share some of the programs that your women's initiative does?
Sure. So I think I already mentioned before that we have basically 3 main sections of our Women's Interest Network that we have at our site. And so I'm the co-chair of the Personal and Professional Development Committee. So I think if you want to start your own Women's Interest Network, one of the best pieces of advice that I could give you is to really know your audience. So what we do is we'll send a survey out. And the last survey that we did, we had different questions for early career, mid-career, and late career. That where did they really feel the gaps were? So based on that survey, we've been really trying to center our events around what we thought the gaps were. So out of that, we've started a mentoring initiative. So our senior technical committee does one-on-one. They're trying to start one-on-one mentoring. It's non-technical mentoring. So we decided the way that we could be different was to do mentoring lunches. So we have small groups. There are about 8 people that can sign up to attend, and we'll have 2 mentors, and they'll focus on different topics. So some of the feedback that we've gotten is to talk about challenges that people face with dual careers, whether it's with both inside our company or outside, with one person outside the company. How to stand out with non-assertive personality. So we've focused on some of that. So we do mentoring. We also have a seminar series, so we'll do talks about career advancement when we know someone that's more senior in management is coming, so we'll get them to give a talk. We also organize the Women's History Month events, so we'll always have an external speaker for that. So we'll select external speakers to have them come in to talk about a topic that we find would be very interesting and beneficial. So that's a lot of just what we do with the Personal and Professional Development Committee. We also have a working parents group, so they work to provide resources for working parents, so about childcare, resources that they would recommend for childcare, things to do in the area, as well as one of the things that came out of the survey was there was recently a lot of new mothers, so they wanted a nursing room, so we were able to get that set up for them, and they also wanted talks about financial planning for college savings, so we were able to set that up. And then finally, the last committee that we have is a STEM Outreach Committee. So one of their big events that they do every year, it's over about the course of a month, they'll do Introduce a Girl to Science and Engineering. And so they have a whole program that they do. They go to middle schools for that. They do different experiments just to introduce girls to different, techniques within science and engineering and really educate them about what kind of careers you could have in the STEM area. They also do outreach throughout the year with elementary schools, middle schools, and high school, just introducing mostly girls, but not always girls, to STEM careers.
Caryn, how about your organization?
We have a corporate leadership, which is our female stockholders, but each of our offices, we have about 17 in the U.S. Is that the right number, Nikki? 17 offices? 25 offices in the United States. Each of those offices has an office lead, and that was actually by design. We figured when Women at Langan came out, we wanted to give women opportunities to step up and have management roles. And each of those locations have the flexibility to do whatever moves them. But in general, it could be it's definitely focused on career advancement and training and paths to stockholdership. There's a philanthropic arm of it too. The gals might do a breast cancer walk or March of Dimes or soup kitchens, things like that. And then there's also like book events, TED Talks, internal communications. We do advocacy work to help mentor the gals up to higher positions. Separate from Langan has an established mentoring program as well. So that's kind of the internal. We try and capture all those different aspects of it, and it looks different from each office depending on what each office's needs are. But then we do a lot of external events and outreaches as well. We've had wine and cheese tasting events where somebody from our firm might do a presentation, say, on the statistics of engineering in the workplace, and somebody else might do unconscious bias, so that somebody else is actually in my audience at the moment. So we like kind of co-present, and folks from their firm and our firm will come in and network. We've done wine and cheese events. We've done women in beer events, which have been a lot of fun. And I'll tell you, the men and the women do participate. When we think about like, the training and the coaching, really anything we're teaching the women on the career path and knowing your financial metrics or knowing the indicators for success can resonate with the up-and-coming guys as well. So it's always been open to the men and the women, and we get a pretty decent participation from the men as well. That's it. I'll leave
Grace,
it at
how
that.
about at the brewery? What do you do there?
So we have separated into different chairs to kind of encompass, so we all kind of were owners in it and all had equal responsibility in keeping the group going with our other job that is going on. So I'm the professional development chair, so kind of similar to, I think, the rest of you have. We outreach to either senior management at other breweries, whether it's outside of the company. I actually got lunch with Caryn and Nikki a couple weeks ago, and that was fantastic. Then we've been doing tours, so bringing groups in and giving them a tour of the brewery and doing food. I had wine on the mind. Doing a food and beer event tasting, and then the money we raise, we either put towards our group or some kind of fundraiser for the community. And then I really think the most important part is mentoring of the younger women at the brewery. Everyone in our group is probably under the age of 30. There's not really anyone older than that has been with the company, at least in the New Jersey area. For 15 years ago, I've been told that women in the brewery were only secretaries or bookkeepers, like they weren't managers, they weren't operations on the floor wearing a hard hat. So I think the company does want to grow that network and grow women in the company, but I think something that's kind of stalling that is just the mentoring of young women. So I gave this example earlier, but I'm obsessed with this book. It's called The Defining Decade, and it talks about advice for 20-somethings. And it talks about how if you're coming out of college and you don't feel uncomfortable in your first role, your first job in the real world, then you're either way overconfident or you're not working hard enough. You're not challenging yourself enough. So I think a lot of women going into a challenging workplace, they'll say, what's wrong with me? Why can't I handle this? This is too hard for me. Maybe I should have studied something else. Like I can't be an engineer. And I think just having that, being there for them and be able to have that conversation, like this is totally normal. This person is mad about something, but it's not you. He's like that to everybody. It's okay. And kind of having that conversation. But on the flip side, I noticed something that we do need to start doing to support men in the company as well. If they are having these issues, they're not going to go to more senior managers and be like, I am stressed out about this is what's bothering me. And they won't necessarily come out and say that, but you can tell when someone is having a hard time, especially someone who's younger than I am, and just kind of pulling them aside and say, hey, how's it going? Like, what's going on? And kind of being able to be there. This group has given me the confidence that I can help people when they first start out and being able to grow that network together. And I think that is good for both sides, just being able to have that communication and seeing like how we can balance each other in a positive way.
I just want to share one of the programs we did at my firm because it was very fun. So if anyone's looking for a fun event, I mean, in addition to, we work a lot on leadership, you know, at all levels of our firm and helping women become partners, we do work on business development. And we ran this program once where we all went to Saks, Fifth Avenue in New York, and we did have to have an educational component, so we learned how to dress for success, and then we got to have some wine and then go shopping with a discount coupon. So, you know, I did buy a great pair of boots, as did a potential referral source that I brought with me. She still wears them to this day, and she became one of my biggest clients. So, I mean, there's a lot we can gain from the different programs that we do with the Women's Initiative. So one thing I wanted to turn the conversation to now is I think there's been some allusion to it, but the role of men in our women's initiatives. There's been, you know, different literature written on this that, you know, you need to get the men's buy-in, you need to have them be allies, you know, because sometimes there's criticisms of women's group, like are we siloing ourselves off, are we not connecting with the right people, so that's why you need to bring the men in. So I'd like to get the perspective of the panelists on the role that men play in their women's initiatives. Grace, do you want to start?
Sure. So, like I said, the general manager is super supportive. He is a champion for all the women that are there, and he says that he sees us as the next leaders, and he does believe in our group and what we're standing for and how strong we are in our business decisions for things that we're doing as business leaders. But there is a challenge still with the people that have been there for a period of time, getting their buy-in and how we can provide, how this group is going to benefit the company as a whole. Something else I'd like to mention and is at work. So I know people have talked about work-life balance, having men take more responsibility in the home, help taking care of kids, help take responsibility for that. But I think don't have a family of my own yet. I would like to someday, but I think something that is really important that kind of gets glossed over sometimes is men in the workplace and kind of the same topic around that. So letting men do more female-oriented tasks. So traditionally, women have been secretaries, bookkeepers, that kind of thing. So whenever there is tasks like that, we notice those tasks kind of falling onto the women. They notice we do a lot of signage and decoration of different, if something's coming or to show results or celebrations, and women are always the ones printing out those calendars. And I think something that if there is a man who started doing those things on his own, he's like, well, I can do this. I can print stuff out. That's fine. And I don't think we are a close community and everybody is friends at the brewery because it's such a small community. But I do think there was some fun poked at him for kind of doing arts and crafts when he was printing these out. And I didn't really realize it until I stepped back and looked at I don't think they realize it either. Mm-hmm. But I think for empowering men in the workforce to do, maybe he is interested in graphic design and printing those things out, and maybe other people will see him poked fun at and kind of step back and not do that. So I think by allowing men the empowerment to not feel demasculated by doing something that's typically feminine, like we empower ourselves to be able to do things that are typically more masculine.
And to follow along with that, so, and I'm thinking back to just some of my male counterparts, having a culture of openness and transparency. So, you know, we bring the women together to talk about issues, but, you know, the men, they may not feel as comfortable talking about certain things. And so just having that openness and trying to get them to explain if they're having an issue, understanding that, to Grace's point, that there are what are traditionally male tasks and traditionally female tasks. Well, it's got to be, you know, I've got my partners who have children and they want to go make sure that they get to their soccer games and the baseball games and it's parents' night, or one of my partners, his wife is working and he has to make sure that he goes and covers the kids so she can go to work. And it's really about, and he's a partner, and so it's about making sure that everybody understands that there's not a typical male or female role, right? It's that we want to balance. It goes back to that wheel of life thing where you want to balance everything, and everybody does it a little differently, but that it doesn't matter if it's my male counterpart that needs to go home and make sure he supports his wife, or I have to go and take care of taking my son for surgery, which was 2 weeks ago. It's about having that culture of transparency and being able to talk about things. And being able to bring, maybe what we should be doing. I'm looking at Lovepreet because she's the protege that's going to be, helping shape some of what we do next in our women's initiative. Maybe bringing the men in and talking about that kind of thing, and encouraging a culture of understanding between the two groups. So it's really diverse. So, and it might help with the buy-in. I don't know. I'm getting all kinds of ideas today. So it's very cool just hearing everybody else's stories.
We talked a little bit before too. It's great to talk about equity in the workplace, but it has to start at home too. Sometimes the women are carrying too much of a burden, and I see it as a generational thing too. Some of my male counterparts have stay-at-home wives that take care of everything, but if you look at the millennials, they are more involved in the daycare and the shopping and the day-to-day laundry and things like that, which kind of put them in the conversation that you're talking about there, Sherry. So I think they are more interested in the same type of, I don't even like work-life, you need your work and your life balance with home, but you have
really
to
just
also
life
be
balance,
a person
right? It's
as
life
well,
balance.
your personal interests too. So.
Amy, you had mentioned that it's important to the success of your women's initiative to have that male buy-in. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Sure. So like I said, we've always had really great management support, and so we've had a lot of, like our vice president is obviously a male, so he'll come and be to our events, talk, and so a lot of people see that, and I think that definitely helps with buy-in. One of the things that we've done recently too, which I think has helped, whenever we have an external speaker come in, one thing that we'll also ask them to do is to give a workshop. And so we'll invite, they're usually about 20 to 50 people maybe, depending on what it is at the workshop. And so we'll either ask for nominations from management or we'll pick people to come. And so we always have a good male representation. And so what they do during the workshops is usually an activity. One of the ones I know that was really successful, I unfortunately wasn't there, was one on unconscious bias. And it's just the activity where you give the same resume, one male, one female. And so I think by going through these examples, they can actually recognize what's going on, unconscious bias that they may have. We've done other ones, and we've always gotten a lot of feedback after that. Like, I didn't realize this. I really want to join your WIN network now. So I think that's one way, and we're a bunch of scientists and engineers basically at the site. So one thing that people love there is data. So I think for us, one of the things that really helped us has just been presenting the data that you can get from consulting groups. I think has also really helped people be able to look at it. They have something tangible that they can see and recognize that diversity is very important.
Great. I did get a signal that we're starting to run out of time, so we did want to open it up to see if there's questions from the group. Seeing no questions, I'll pose another question.
There's a question back here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Okay. Wait, I think we need to get you
Get
a
the
mic
microphone?
because we are recording this.
For those of you who have groups that have companies with other groups to represent other, underrepresented groups in management, whether that's a gay group or whatever, how do you work with them as well? How do you leverage the power of all of those groups?
I think I was the only person that worked at a company where we had other employee resource groups. So we have, I think, about 7 different employee resource groups on site. So as we love acronyms, so I could tell you all the acronyms. I don't know what they all stand for, but basically we have a resource group for veterans, we have one for advancement of Latinos, we have one for African Americans, we have Asian, we have a pride group, which would be the LGBT group. So we do work together. One of the things I mentioned that we started was a mentoring lunch series, small groups. So we piloted that in our WIN group. It was very successful. We got good feedback, so we rolled that out to the other employee resource groups, and now they're all involved, and we switch off on a rotating basis, which helps personally for me because I just have to get the topics, and then they can run with it. And then we also do, when we have an external speaker come in, if we want a really high-impact speaker, those can tend to be expensive, so we usually pull our resources together and work together. And so I think we've had a lot more success working together, and so it's been really beneficial.
I was just going to jump in and say we don't have one other than the Women at Langan group, but I'll tell you it sparks the conversation for all the other groups. And some of our more technical groups have a more diverse group, and the managers there will say to me that what you're doing is important to us as well. It's opening the same doors, it's opening the same conversations, and many of those folks do attend all our meetings and initiatives. And at the corporate level, I think when we talk about Women at Langan, the executive committee hears diversity rather than gender equity, so it does get worked into the conversations and the decisions, and I think it has moved the needle for everybody.
So what we have at my firm, we have a women's initiative, we have a diversity committee which has subcommittees, and then we have a working parents committee. We don't necessarily do programming together, but sometimes we will duplicate each other's programming. Like at the women's initiative, we had come up with an advisor program for women associates that were going through the partnership process, and they got assigned a partner, to help them through the process. And then the other, like the diversity committee did that. And then so I think the ideas are percolated and then shared, but we don't necessarily work together on the different initiatives.
Something actually came up in one of our last meetings we had, and we were talking about why is diversity important and what do we get out of it as a business or company. And we were talking about how we wanted to form the group because sometimes we felt like our ideas were overpowered by a majority that kind of thought and acted differently just because they were all similar people. So when you have a group of people all kind of think and process the same, they're going to all come to the same conclusion and move forward with the same decision. So the real importance of diversity was if everybody in the circle is completely different, you are really going to listen to each person and what they have to say, because there's not going to be a majority that drives it, and you're going to be able to objectively think what is the right idea, what is the best approach, and be able to take that with you. And it was something that came up with that we don't have diversity in that aspect at the brewery. And it was something we've been working on recruiting and developing groups for that, but it's definitely something that we realized a gap in and that we are trying to find a way to close it.
Okay, we have another question over here.
Thanks. It's been really interesting. In terms of the diversity point, I worked for a law firm. I worked very hard with a colleague to establish a women's initiative many years ago. We were off to a good start, but the thing that struck me as very interesting was dealing with multi-generations in the workplace. And what I found was it was something that was very important to me and a lot of my colleagues around the same age as me. When we started having events, what surprised me was some of the younger female attorneys said, "We don't need this," and we're almost offended by it. Some of the women who were...
I had almost the exact same conversation with
some of the
our
women
girls.
who were maybe a decade or so ahead of me said we had to succeed in the law without any kind of flexibility or accommodations. We don't need this. And who I found really showed up the most were middle-aged white men who had daughters that were starting to enter the workplace, and it was the first time they realized some of the barriers, and it was very eye-opening in terms of what you think other people may need, and I think that's to the diversity point. But how, have you been able to kind of harness the different generations, bring them together, and have some of those conversations to make everything worthwhile?
I definitely see some of the same things you said. The gals right out of school, they didn't have any challenges with their gender those issues, and they were like, I remember one woman very clearly said, "I don't want it, I don't need it, I think you're actually creating friction where it's not needed." And said, okay, well, you're free to participate or not as you see fit. But definitely, like you said, the middle age group does seem very engaged. They've worked hard, they have put in their sweat equity as they see fit, and then they feel like they're not getting, perhaps they're not advancing for whatever reason. But then the older gals, I guess that's me, are looking for ways to bring those gals up the pipeline. At least in our industry, there's not many women senior managers, and we want to make sure that we're looking at the folks, providing them opportunities for advancement. So I guess what our goals are different than what the other ones are. And I can tell you, actually I'm very proud to say Langan has no pay gap between males and females. We're very proud of that. We strive very hard to be that way. And we have no promotional gap. men and women advance pretty much at the same rate. It's just the pipeline. There's not very many women in the pipeline. And I see very clearly that there are some gals that meet the metrics but don't feel like they're ready to do it. So it's more the, hey, you have it, you met the numbers, you have the right financials, you're managing the right people. It's time for you, and encouraging them to be up there. So it's not that we're going to hit everybody in the same way, but everybody's goal and what they want to get out of it is different. And to that end, the programs are flexible enough that we have some training for the junior staff to help with them. We have a lot of mentoring for the middle levels, and then the senior folks really see it as their legacy to try and make a better place for the gals that are coming up there. And if we haven't stressed it enough, the millennial guys definitely are in the room. They see the same things. They want to be more involved. They hear, there's a wonderful TED Talk about the advice you're not getting, and it's usually the financial. We're very good at our science. We're very good at our project management, but maybe you don't know the financials. And the moral of that TED Talk was that, hey, learn your financials. And the guys sit in the room and say, hey, we don't know that either. We're struggling with the same things. So the conversations help everybody, I think, at all levels. And it gives leaders opportunities to present and mentor, and it gives the junior staff opportunities to step up.
I think I'll be quick about this, but I think I saw the same thing. There were some women that were kind of like embarrassed to be part of the group, and that it was going to create friction, and that what would some of the men think of them if they felt like they needed this. And then I also saw some of the more senior women that maybe weren't in management or leadership roles. They didn't show up to a single meeting, maybe the first one, and then they stopped coming because they maybe thought that was cute, but we don't need that. We've been working here for 20 years and we know how things are, and that's how it's going to be. But I would just, in my opinion, they're free to do what they please, right? But I would look at it the same way as you would look at a man who told you didn't need the meeting either, or didn't want to be a part of it. It is good to empower those around you, but if they don't want to be involved with it, it's not doing anyone any good to not live your truth and kind of what you believe in and what you think you need as a business leader.
And I have to say, we don't have that in our group. So I feel very blessed. It's open to every level in the organization, every position, and I'm sitting here trying to figure out what's different. I don't know if it's the way it's communicated or because we're in a smaller environment. So I guess everybody sees it as an opportunity to just be exposed to all the different levels and generations. So.
One of the coolest things we do is we do something called Conversations With, where we invite all the senior leaders to come in and have a conversation of their path to, in our case, stockholdership.
Right.
And it's a great chance for the junior staff to figure out who the partners are, and it's a great chance for the partners to kind of connect with the younger generation.
But it's interesting, even in some of the dialogue in the sessions and the meetings we've had, everybody you have. Goes to the whole diversity and even in age diversity. I'm listening and hearing things from the younger people and just kind of taking that in and drinking that in and saying, okay, what is it that I maybe need to change in my view or outlook or the way I handle them or the way I communicate with them. It's an opportunity for me to learn from them, and I'm very lucky. We're lucky at Mercadien to know that they feel the same way about us and every layer in between. So I
think we're all striving for diversity of decisions. We want people in the room. Make no mistake, diversity is hard conversations. It's easy when you're all thinking the same and we all nod and we go in the same direction.
We don't know what we're missing if we're all exactly the same.
Right.
So
but sometimes those conversations are difficult because you had your idea where you were going and somebody has an opinion that turns the ship on you, and you have to address it.
And I think playing off that is some of the most influential moments or light bulb moments I've had is inviting men into the group and hearing their side of it, and just having like the poster making thing, like that came from a man, and it really opens your eyes to some things on the other side that might be slowing down the progress that we're striving for.
I think we're out of time, right? 5 minutes. Oh, 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
We got the 5 minutes before. Are there other questions? Okay. Just wait for the mic, please.
Okay. we've had our women's group for about 10 years now, and you know, it's ebbed and flowed, but it's basically successful. But one of the things we fought is budgeting. And I think at least Amy said she has a budget. Do all of your women's groups have money set aside? We've been able to go and get money for marketing and things like that, but it's not designated just for the women's group. And sometimes it feels like we should be able to have our own budget and have the autonomy to decide how to use it.
That question comes up for us for all the time from every office. Do we have a budget to do it? Again, we're only in our 3rd year. We're trying to figure it out. So we're trying to figure out how much do we spend on an annual basis, what's reasonable, and using data and statistics to figure out what would be the right amount to allocate going further. So we're trying to develop it. We don't have one yet.
Every employee resource group at our site in Clinton, we do have an allocated budget. And so we've been lucky every year since I've been involved. We've been able to get more money, which allows us to do more events. I don't think I can share what our budget is, but
You got to use it all so you can ask for a little more the next year.
Yes, yeah.
We have a budget on ours, and we always try to max it out, because if we don't, we're not getting.
Don't leave any on the
we're not
table.
getting
Budget
anything.
next year.
You know, we always ask for more.
With Women in Beer, I'm glad you guys all use acronyms too, but we raise money through giving tours of the brewery to different groups. We haven't been doing as much as we'd like to, but it's actually an interesting question because we haven't asked for money because we do everything internally, or we meet after work or during work. We haven't gone on events. I think one time we did a paint and drink beer, you know, like the wine and paint. We did beer and paint, and we did it at the brewery, and everybody bought the materials together. So we invited everybody in the brewery that wanted to join this to paint, and we actually decorated our break room with the paintings that we made. But we all just chipped in out of our own pockets for this, and it's worth the conversation to ask for a budget to be able to do more things like that.
And we have a budget so we're accountants, we have to have a budget.
Are there any other questions? Well, I'm going to ask the panelists to give us one tip on what makes their women's initiative successful. I'm going to start at the end and work way back.
Oh man, had to ask me first. I guess the biggest thing is, if you do have a shrinking group, is to reach out and join with other women's groups. Maybe you can't exactly relate on the day-to-day business things that you go through, but you can relate as human beings and as women. Something I was thinking about just now is when I went to lunch with Caryn and Nikki, one thing we were talking about was different flavors of Oreos. And I know it seems silly, but I kind of thought that to succeed in life, I'd have to learn to talk about football, I'd have to learn to like golf, and even though golfing is fun, I have learned how to golf, like it's not, I always thought that I was gonna have to hide that side of myself when I am having that conversation, and that's not the truth, and that there are people out there, and there are women that I will work with someday that I can talk about Oreos with and not have them think I'm silly. But it's little things like that really bring the engagement into the workplace that I think sometimes we're lacking. So.
Tip, boy, that's a tough one. I guess it's really just keeping it top of mind and keeping it refreshed and making sure that you bring every level of women, the women that are in your workforce, to the table to dialogue about it and see what it is that they're interested in and moving it forward. So you just have to make it a priority.
Yeah, I think I already touched upon this before, but just really know your audience, know what their needs and wants are. If you're making programs and events that aren't addressing that, then you'll lose interest pretty quickly.
I would say keep everybody engaged as much as possible. We have tons of different events, and it comes from a whole wide variety of sources of people suggesting that. So the more you can engage the folks in your company to make suggestions, the better. But I'll say too that the first part of my career, I underestimated the power of networking, and Women at Langan has reinvigorated my attention to networking, and you can never underestimate the power of just making a connection in your career, in your life.
My tip will be, don't be afraid to ask. You know, if we don't ask for it, we can't necessarily get it. I mean, just the circumstance I'm thinking of is I had chaired a committee and people were being rotated off the committee. I was sitting there with the head of my firm, and he was rotating off some of the women and replacing them with men, and I'm like, no, we can't do that. I'm not gonna let that happen under my watch, and I actually said that to him, and he's like, okay, and he added another woman, and we were back to being equal. So, well, think about it. So just, well, you might get what you want, but you won't get if you don't ask.
That's exactly right.
Have the difficult conversations.
Yes, which we didn't get to go to that seminar.
Yes.
But we had it here.
Great. Well, thank you so much to Heather and our panelists. So let's give them a round.